The year is 2004. You are a hunter in Mineguard. Suddenly, you see a quest posted, On the Trail of the Beast. You only get one chance to find and slay your quarry. You take it, setting out for the dark, foggy depths of the old swamp. Slowly you make your way past herds of bullfango, presumably rooting for truffles in the damp soil. Then, in the distance, you see it. A bright, shining monster, barely bigger than the bullfango you passed. Yet its body plan matches no large monster the hunter has seen before. The creature is equine, pale and spectral. Its body resembles a kelbie, but this is no kelbie. Its mane crackles with thunder, and its body radiates a soft, ghostly sheen. It seems not to be a creature of this world. The year is 2019. You are a hunter dispatched from Celiana to explore the mysterious Guiding Lands, a space where climates and biomes clash and bleed into one another. You have heard reports of a broken-horned Kirin. In a newly discovered volcanic pocket you spy the creature again, white and shining, its mane crackling with thunder, and its body radiating that soft, ghostly glow you remember from so long ago. Then, without warning, a giant monkey leaps from the shadows, breaks off the creature's horn, and, standing atop its corpse, proceeds to eat it. What happened between these two events? How in the 15 years between Monster Hunter 1 and Iceborne's first title update, did one of the first Elder Dragons, a creature modelled on the unicorn of legend, become a staple for a fanged beast's maturity rite? Good day everyone, this is Laraika Leray, your local gaming academic, and this gap is what I am going to talk about today. Not simply in the case of Kirin, but rather in the case of all Elder Dragons. Because Elder Dragons have changed, and they have changed in ways that I think are really important to recognise when talking about them, about their in-universe status as living natural disasters, and about their place and role in the franchise, both historically and going forward. So like, subscribe, sit back, and relax. The first thing I want to get out of the way is that Rajang preying on Kirin was not a concept only conceived in Iceborne. The idea itself apparently goes back as far as Monster Hunter DOS, the game that our resident King Kong debuted in, when World's eventual director Yuya Tokuda asked Kanami Fujioka if he could feed Kirin horns to a Rajang through the pet system. Iceborne was the first title this relationship was fully realised in, however, and this situating of Kirin within the normal order of predator-prey dynamics is noticeable not simply because Kirin is nominally an Elder Dragon, but because it is one of the original Elder Dragons, one designed to contrast the otherwise grounded world visuals and creature design of the franchise. Kirin's Japanese title is Phantom Beast, Kenji, a word that marks it as deliberately otherworldly, ghostly, and mysterious. Not, in other words, a thing that should regularly be monkey food. Even if this shift was long in coming, the shift has still happened. What has happened to Kirin, in my view, is a process that in the social sciences and humanities is called disenchantment, the cultural process by which the world becomes less magical and more scientific. In his 1920 book, The Sociology of Religion, the sociologist Max Weber frames disenchantment as a hallmark of modern secularized societies, notably those in Western Europe, where it became a key factor in the separation of church and state, religion from public life. A disenchanted world is one where spiritual beliefs are easily segregated from the workings of politics, economics, and public governance. Disenchantment here translates the German Entzauberung, which other scholars have suggested might be better read as demagification, the removal of magic. For Weber, this was a phenomenon that took place when humanity began to assume that it could, in his words, in principle master all things by calculation. That the world, that nature, could be mastered, understood, and thus manipulated according to rational calculus. This was itself a historical process. In a magic-filled world, nature might be manipulated through the propitiation of deities and spirits, by giving offerings and performing rituals, for example. This is still a form of calculation, but of a different order. It relies on external supernatural forces heeding one's requests. In a disenchanted world, however, nature is directly masterable. Humanity comes to see itself as able to control the world with its own hands. My core thesis in this video is that Elder Dragons in Monster Hunter have gone through a gradual process of disenchantment, a shift from being written and perceived as borderline supernatural entities with no clear place in the natural order, to more comprehensible animals with abilities that, while catastrophic, are natural and comprehensible to the guild and to us. This shift is gradual and uneven, but I think fairly definitive. This video started as a general Elder Dragon video in which I categorized elders based on how their abilities functioned, but in the course of writing I realized that something more interesting, at least to me, had happened over the course of the franchise. So that's what you're going to hear today, but here's my original tier list if you really want to see it. Anyway, let's get started. Let's begin at the beginning, with the first generation. Monster Hunter, the game, gave us 3 Elder Dragons: Kirin, Lao Shanlung, and Fatalis. All were, in their distinct ways, designed to not fit the world. Kirin and Fatalis consciously evoke creatures of myth, the unicorn and the hexapod western dragon, respectively. Lao Shanlung is different but similar. While Fatalis and Kirin carry an air of the supernatural and otherworldly, Lao Shanlung seems, beyond its size, more comprehensible. It is dangerous primarily because it is huge, and not necessarily because it seems to usher from outside the bounds of contemporary science. However, it nevertheless carries a sense of the divine. It is, quite simply, a moving mountain, and mountains have long themselves been seen as conduits and residences for divinity in cultures across the world. Its status as a giant is also, I think, important. The word giant stems from the Greek word gigas, which literally means earthborn. The giants were the animalistic children of the earth goddess, Gaia, and waged war against the Olympian gods, often being conflated with the Titans. We know very little about Lao Shanlung's ecology. However, when not migrating, it seemingly dwells within the earth, its shell forming from the sediment of eons. The framing of an earthborn giant and of a mountain that walks situates Lao Shanlung at least in the realm of the preternatural, whereas the supernatural seems to exist beyond the normal laws and frameworks of science and nature, in the realm of the divine. The preternatural historically was the remit of the demonic, not in the sense of being evil, but in how it existed within the natural world, bending and twisting natural laws, but not actually being able to break them. The preternatural was the realm of the marvelous, but not the miraculous. Mysterious, majestic, and sublime, to be sure, but not transcendent. This situating of Elder Dragons beyond the realm of normal monsters continues in the second-gen games, but I think here is where we start to see the early stages of a shift. The second-gen gives us Kushala Daora, Teostra and Lunastra, Chameleos, Yamatsukami, and Old Fatalis. Old Fatalis is where the supernatural quality is still most apparent. It infamously enters the battle through a literal portal, but the others are a bit more complex. Yamatsukami continues the trajectory of Monster Hunter-ifying mythology, in this case with the Kraken. One of the most famous stories told of the Kraken is the idea that it was so huge it would be mistaken for an island, leading unwary sailors to weigh anchor at its shores and make camp upon its back, only for the creature to stir, sink, and consume them whole. Yamatsukami takes this core concept and elevates it into the skies, adding a touch of the unclassifiable by seeming to be a flying cephalopod with human teeth and a forest on its back. 10 out of 10 design, no notes. It is a marvelous creature capable of devouring entire forests and drinking entire lakes. It is a living, floating island with unique flora upon its back, but it is also just a giant ball of gas with great thunderbugs nesting in it. Its place above the natural order of wyverns is due to a blend of its size and its bizarre morphology, but where I think things really first start to turn is with the core Dose trio. On the surface, the Dose trio of elders, Kushala Daora, Teostra and Lunastra, and Chameleos, have abilities that border on magical. Kushala is made of metal and can control wind and storms. Teostra and Lunastra control fire. Chameleos can turn invisible and blanket an entire forest in fog. And these are all true. However, these elemental abilities are paired with relatively grounded, more animalistic qualities that we don't see in Gen 1 Elders. Kushala and the first Elder variant Rusted gives us our first look at an Elder Dragon life cycle, for example, a molting pattern similar to those of real-world reptiles and insects. Teostra and Lunastra are our first sexually dimorphic Elder Dragons, situating them within the realm of normal animal biology and the cycles of standard sexual reproduction. Further, their explosive abilities are linked to their dander. Chameleos' invisibility is perhaps the most grounded, tied to a blend of disorientation, neurotoxic hallucinations, diet, and electrical stimulation. It also notably maintains relatively peaceable relations with the humans and monsters in its vicinity. It can become a disaster, but it is not one by inclination. Although these Gen 2 Elders are given effectively supernatural control over elements, this control exists entwined with attributes that place these Elders firmly in the realm of normal animal ecology. They grow and molt, they pair up and reproduce. Their powers are a result of normal biological causes like diet. This is a marked difference from the first title in the franchise, in which Elders very clearly set outside of normal ecology and the categories of the known world. It is perhaps important in hindsight that this generation is where the category Elder Dragon really starts to become a comprehensible, if still waste bin, taxon. Many of its members share morphology, giving rise to the standard Elder Dragon skeleton that finds full saturation in 5th gen. Crucially, the category is also not one solely determined by power. The god wyverns that crown this generation, Akantor and Ukanlos, are after all flying wyverns, not Elder Dragons. The 3rd generation straddles many of the features seen in 1st and 2nd gen. In the more supernatural camp, you have Fatalis' Black Dragon compatriots, Elatrion and Diamoralis, as well as Amatsu, heavenly god of calamity. Amatsu is in many ways an eastern counterpart to the western Fatalis, or Alatreon, borrowing the silhouette of a skybound eastern dragon who controls rain and storms. Like the Black Dragons, Amatsu seems to sit outside of the ordinary flow of nature. It has a mythic dimension augmented by its mythic powers. In the more preternatural camp, however, you have Sidious and Gen Moran, elders that follow in the footsteps of Lao Shanlung's dangerous because big. There is a godlike quality to these Elder Dragons, whether in lore or in framing. Sidious is spoken of in Moga as the wandering god of the deep sea, and its name in both English and Japanese contains the word Deus, the Latin word for god. Gen Moran sustains the culture of the region through the awe it bears, its arrival heralding the sandstorm season and being the focus of the Moran festival. Its main subspecies is Hallowed Gen Moran, the sacred mountain dragon, the crystals lining its body shining out of the darkness to inspire a sense of awe and terror. These are monsters that, much like Lao Shanlung, carry a sense of the earthborn preternatural, of mystery, emerging from the unfathomed depths of sea and sand and descending to them in turn. But at the same time, something is different here. Lao emerged suddenly from the earth, a calamity of unknown origins and unknown destination. Gen Moran is a big whale in the Great Desert, and its coming and going is an event that the calendar is set by. It is known. The Sidious is causing earthquakes because of pain caused by its misshapen horn, and the story ends with you breaking that horn and repelling the creature. I think this is important because within the logic of a video game, even more than being able to be killed by a player, displaying physical discomfort and pain is a very naturalistic quality, a very clear way to bring a god down to earth. Players kill gods in games all the time after all, but rarely do those gods display pain. The first 3 generations tread a line of perception between the supernatural, existing beyond the ordinary laws of nature and science, and the preternatural, the marvelous and mysterious that seemingly exists in a gap between nature and divinity. Monsters in the latter category evoke majesty and awe. They shape the land through passing, destroy and give rise to ecosystems and cultures. But they are also very clearly animals. Powerful, massive, world-shaping animals to be sure, but animals. Their gargantuan size, and sometimes their seemingly supernatural abilities, blend with more standard morphologies and mundane animal behaviours that situate them as part, a mysterious part but a part nonetheless, of the comprehensible order of nature. While figures like Alatreon, Diamoralis and Amatsu still reside firmly beyond the proper order of nature, at least at this point, Gen 2 and 3 presents a definitive shift in how most elders in the franchise come to be conceptualized both within the world and classified within the lore. But I think the shift really, truly starts to happen in Gen 4, and specifically with Gore Magala. The Magala line, that is, Gore, its defective variant Chaotic, and its adult form Shigaru, signifies a major shift in how Elder Dragons are framed by the franchise. It is the first of what I am going to call the Terraformer class of Elders. These do not have overtly supernatural powers, technically, or even preternatural presence. Rather, they are presented as having entirely mundane ecological processes that have the capacity to devastate and transform the world around them. Not in the way that Lao Shan Lung might, reshaping the land through its sheer size and mysterious origins and destination, but rather through the much more grounded biological processes of feeding, breeding, and navigating the world around them. This new type of Elder forms the baseline for essentially every major narrative thread in 5th Gen, but it begins with Gore Magala, and so will we. Now, unlike some of the later examples, Gore does not literally reshape the terrain. However, I would argue that ecologically speaking it does the equivalent. Unlike the semi-divine elders like Amatsu, who can control the weather, or those like Teostra or Kushala Deora, whose supernatural abilities rest alongside otherwise mundane animal habits like mating and molting, the Magala's threat is a direct result of its biological processes, its sensory and reproductive systems. The Frenzy virus is, in Gore, a side effect of how it navigates the world through its scales, like some enormous blind dragon moth shedding toxic dust everywhere. This threat is intrinsic to Gore's ecology, because once it molts into its adult form, the virus becomes the means of its reproduction and dominance, repressing the molting of competitors while permitting new generations of Gore Magala to grow and emerge. These are profoundly animal behaviors, not divine or devilish ones. The Magala line is among my favourite Elder Dragons in the franchise for this reason. They are at once the most explicable, the least mysterious in the franchise, and yet one of the most threatening precisely because of the effect their biological processes have on the world around them. Bluntly, I do not really understand why the guild actually allows Gore Magala to exist at all, and it's probably a testament to some hard-headed scholars fighting its corner for an as-yet unknown ecological reason. Speaking both in franchise and narrative trajectory terms, however, the Magalas lay the groundwork for a large number of powerful elders to follow, ones who transform the world not merely by size or apparent supernatural ability, but rather because how they live and breathe in the world reshapes that world in thoroughly mundane but deeply cataclysmic ways. It is not that 4th Gen onwards is devoid of the preternatural, but this becomes more tempered. De Lamadeur draws on the same mythological tropes as Kirin Fatalis and Yamatsukami, manifesting the figure of the World Serpent. and the weapons crafted from its Shah variation retell a creation myth in which it literally makes the world. But this is chiefly cultural flavour. Although the monster can call meteors from the heavens, its mythic capacity to shape and reshape the world is derived chiefly from its size. It carves mountains with its mass. Its corpses, or at least those of its ancestors, become the foundations of entire ecosystems. These are natural processes, even if their impact can seem the stuff of legends. This sense of an almost mythic veil over what are fundamentally mundane, albeit fantastical biological processes forms the foundation of many 5th generation elders, especially what I will call the set-piece elders and the final bosses. These monsters reshape ecosystems through the natural flow of their life processes. Sora Magdaros die, and their bodies can form entire lands. Kulve Taroth builds and supports an entire ecosystem as it carves out the caverns of El Dorado. The old everworm Shara Ishvalda tunnels its way through the Everstream, feeding from it and reshaping the land through its sonic vibrations, giving rise to much of the New World's geography in the process. In this sense, it is much like Dalamada, whose skeletons form the backbone of the Veil, and it carries a similarly mythic quality with its heavy Buddhist influence. But even as it can give shape to continents, it is also simply an animal going about its business. Bioenergy provides much of the backbone for the operations of the 5th Gen Elders, rooting much of the mechanisms of Elder Dragon ecology in the substance. Bioenergy is undoubtedly a fantastical substance, but it is not itself magic. It is a material thing in the world, and as such ecosystems and animals have evolved around it like they would any other natural resource. This is true for Shara Ishvalda, but it is also true for the final boss of Base World, Xenojiva, and its adult form Safijiva. Even from its egg sac deep in the recess, this dragon was able to manipulate the process of the Elder Crossing through the release of pheromones to accelerate its own growth, drawing more and more Elders and their delicious bioenergy to its environs. The mechanism of this process is, while left mysterious, as much of bioenergy is, still situated within the general order of the Jiva reproductive and maturation cycle, a deeply natural process even while it has an unnatural flavour. World in general, with its chief focus on the Elder Crossing, operates to ground the life cycles of Elder Dragons in known patterns and precedents. The Hindu and Buddhist aspect named in both Shara Ishvalda and the Jivas are part of this, conveying a sense of the deep cosmological timelines that are often presented in those traditions, to give life to animals that shape and are given shape by endless cycles of death and rebirth. These are animals of almost geological timescales, but they are still animals. Their world shaping is as natural to them as their breathing. Demystification, the process by which the mysterious becomes the mundane, the unknown the known, is a process that can often go hand in hand with disenchantment. The old everworm is a being spoken of only in old myths and scattered fragments. Shah Dalamada's weapons tell the story of its creation of the universe itself. Sidious is spoken of as the wandering god of the deep sea. Yet in their respective games, these are creatures of flesh and blood, and their impacts on the world products of their movement and their growth. This trend of demystification continues in Rise and Sunbreak. Nawa and Ibushi might cause the rampages, the night parade of 100 dragons, but this is ultimately just a knock-on effect of their courtship rituals. The serpent dragons upset entire ecosystems, lay waste to settlements and civilizations through the simple practices of sexual reproduction. The mundane operations of nature here hide within a veil of the otherworldly, a process that can be extended to these games' monster originals more broadly, as they adapt figures of folklore more and less effectively into the trappings of biological animals. This continues in Sunbreak. We are told of the legend of the Archdemon of the Abyss, a creature which emerges when humanity is consumed by darkness and chaos, and feasts upon mortal souls by turning them to wandering flames. However, as we discover, this is merely another subterranean elder, which like the old everworm shakes ecosystems with its burrowing and its breaching, albeit here through its symbiosis with Curio, a species of scarlet parasite that carry a deadly virus not unlike the frenzy of the Magalas. While the ecological impact of Geismagorm is still devastating, There is nothing supernatural or even preternatural about it. It and Malzeno might be modelled on the literal devil and his vampiric thrall, but like the other 5th generation elders before them, they are ultimately just large animals in the process of feeding, territorial defense, and in the case of Malzeno, being real sick. The mythos of the noble guardian dragon of the kingdom who turned on and destroyed it is revealed as an animal infested over the course of standard practices of animal territoriality. The types of elder dragon that come to the fore in 5th gen radically reshape ecosystems and even geography by going through normal functions of animal existence, breeding and feeding. This is different to the biological processes of the Gen 2 elders, in which the ability to manipulate the elements was, by and large, a quality that existed alongside more naturalistic biological processes like molting. It is different from elders like Lao Shanlung and Zora Magdaros, whose sheer size is often what causes their environmental impacts. The death of a Zora might lay the foundation for an entire ecosystem, as with the Guiding Lands, but this is ultimately no different from a whalefall in our own oceans, giving rise to bursts of plenty. It is also different, however, to Fatalis. Fatalis' destruction of Shrade in a single night 1,000 years ago passes into legend as a judgment from the heavens, a result of human hubris, or a burning hatred born by the dragon itself. Even as we slay the dragon in Shrade's ruins at the end of Iceborne, the exact cause of that original destruction yet remains unknown. By contrast, Nawa and Ibushi cause the rampage that repeatedly threatens Komura because they're going to have babies. If you speak to Nata after slaying Gogmazios, the apprentice hunter talks about elder dragons, and about whether they are natural creatures like you or him. As part of this, he tells the Avis hunter that he asked both Alma and Eric. When asked if elder dragons are monsters like any other, the cultural anthropologist says she does not know. "I have no answer to give," were her apparent words. But Eric, the biologist, answers differently. He says that they are creatures with thoughts and instincts like any other, and that this is, in fact, the very reason that you can hunt them at all. This makes me excited about how elder dragons will be explored in Ascendance, especially through the lens of our immediate companions. But it also, in my opinion, captures the tension within elder dragons as a category. To the biologist, attuned to the anatomy and architecture of living things, elders are ultimately just animals. To the anthropologist, however, whose province is the languages, history, and artifacts of the mortal cultures by which elder dragons have come to be known, the answer is less quantifiable. To return to a point I made in my variants video, through the lens of mortal art, religion, culture, and symbolism, an animal is rarely ever just an animal, even less so when it is a dragon worshipped as a god that can bring storms. To close on a related point, the disenchantment of our favourite living natural calamities might be seen to mirror our own understandings of less living natural disasters. It is a cliché, but still a historical truth, that natural disasters were once seen as the province of the divine. We see this still in our language. The word hurricane derives from the name of a storm deity of the indigenous Taino people in the Caribbean. Typhoon is derived from the name of a Greek titan. Today we are able to chart the course and causation of natural disasters with the instruments of science. They are known, their effects can be prepared for, even if the events themselves might be no less devastating in their impacts. Elder dragons in the franchise have charted a similar path. As the generations have progressed, the guild has gained greater and greater knowledge of them, their patterns, their behaviours, their life cycles, and their impact. Their impact might be no less cataclysmic, but the causes behind these impacts have become more and more known, and accordingly more able to be mitigated. The viruses of the Magala line and of Geismagom's Curio can be cured through vaccination, or at least warded against. While the Magalas were the first definitive shift towards elders whose cataclysmic environmental impact was situated primarily in their natural life cycles, this trajectory both began its life earlier with the Dose Trio and reached its full stride in 5th Gen, the generation that brought Kirin out of the realms of phantom sightings in the deep woods and rendered it into Ape Chow, that shed light on the mysteries of the Elder Crossing and of the Rampage, and the one, importantly, in which a player hunter canonically manages to slay 3 of the Elder Dragons whose abilities and framing are the most supernatural: Alatreon, Amatsu, and Fatalis itself. But this is, importantly, not where this story ends, either in terms of the franchise nor of the disenchantment of the Elder Dragon in general. Recent games have repeatedly turned to a process of demystification. The Rampage, the Archdemon of the Abyss, the Old Everworm. In these games, legends and mysticism falls away to reveal the shape of animals living animal lives. Creatures that can, despite it all, be carved up and classified for future generations. Yet if we follow the trail of Elder Dragon Disenchantment to its logical conclusion, that is, to the point where nature is entirely masterable via mortal calculus, we arrive at Xochitl, at Wyveria's final weapon and its final folly, at the endpoint of mortal hubris. In his original thesis on disenchantment, Max Weber was clear that human society's perception of the masterability of nature did not necessarily mean that nature was, in fact, masterable. Rather, it was a belief, and beliefs can be flawed, perilously so. The world, no matter how shorn of magic, can be beyond our capacity to control. And similarly, even when their biology is known, their life cycles mapped, and their abilities read and reacted to, Elder Dragons yet perhaps remain too difficult to tame and too powerful to reproduce. If 5th Gen's lesson was that the gods have been brought down to Earth and can be slain like any beast, perhaps 6th Gen's will ultimately be a reminder that a beast that can be slain like any other can nevertheless still be a god. Thank you everyone for tuning in. This is the first of a few scripts on Elder Dragons that I've been working on, prompted by reflecting on in-universe and fandom discussions about them. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and comment if you did. And if you want to experience more of my content, consider subscribing and ringing the bell icon. I upload long-form videos every Monday evening UK time. I hope you all have a good week. Love and solidarity to you all. This has been Laraika Laray, signing off.
Did I go and burst the bubble? Promise more than I can give. I tried to touch its cosmic sheen, but today